Okay, all right, welcome back, guys.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh, this is Sashiko. I'm Helen, and I teach at the Dorothy Benson Senior Services Center in Sandy Springs. And today we're going to talk about Sashiko stitching, which is Japanese folk art stitching. And I do have a PowerPoint to show you, okay? So let's go over to screen share and do the PowerPoint. All right. All right, can everybody see this? All right.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay, good. So it's called Sashiko, and it just means, it's just a simple running stitch, and it just means small piercing. So, but the thing is that it creates pretty cool designs. It's very simple, just a running stitch, but it looks very complex, doesn't it? Now, all over the world, you have the straight, running stitch kind of thing. And then in India, you have the contact cloth, which is like thin layers of silk saris, stitched with running stitches and everything. But these are a little bit different than that. And probably probably haven't seen this so much, maybe in Africa. Okay. So it started in the snow country of northern Japan. And the reason why is, okay, see that dark blue? That place is all frozen, okay? And in the winter it's very, very cold there, and the growing season is short, and cotton can't grow there. Now, back in the olden days, the people had to wear hemp, fabric made out of hemp. And so it's kind of like rough linen, all right? So anyway, cotton was very rich. Nobody had cotton, okay? So cotton doesn't grow up here where it's cold. Now, how cold does it get? And let's see. Sometimes it gets this cold. Okay, do you see that bus there? Okay, they get a lot of snow. Now, traditionally, the old houses look like this, and sometimes the snow would come all the way up to the first floor. And
Wow.
people would have to use these entrances and exits to get out in and out, okay, and walk on the snow with snowshoes. So it's very cold country. Nowadays it's a little bit better, but there are still some people whose houses are cold. They may not live in those kind of traditional houses, but they're still cold. And back then all they had was this hearth, okay, and the smoke would go up the roof. And people really were cold because if you look in the background, it's just paper, guys. That's just
Wow.
paper.
Really?
Yes. And I grew up in Japan, and my mother is Japanese, my father is Texan. And we would go visit, where my mother grew up and everything. And those houses, they forget insulation, okay? So this was the actual house. She grew up in the mountains. And it's no glass, guys. This is paper. And if there was rain or storm, there would be wooden, very thin plywood wooden storm doors, okay? And so think open air. And there's no central heating, you have that hearth there. And so what people would do, and the person on the left is my great-great-grandmother. This is a hibachi. You heard in America, they call it hibachi or something, but this is an actual hibachi. It's a ceramic pot, and inside it's full of ashes. And they put hot coal and bury hot coal in there. So you warm your hands. You're cold everywhere else, okay? Trust me, you're cold. Living in Japan, I was cold. We were sort of westernized. We didn't have central heat. We had a kerosene stove that had a chimney on it, so we didn't have to open the windows. But sometimes when you go visit somebody's house in Japan, they'll have a little kerosene portable heater, and you have to open the windows. You have to crack open the windows, otherwise you'll.
Attention residents, we have investigated the alarm and it is a false alarm. Please do not leave the building. All is well. Thank you. Sorry for the inconvenience.
Okay, sorry about that, guys.
Attention all residents. Management has investigated the alarm and it is a false alarm. The system tripped. Do not leave the buildings. All is well. We apologize for the inconvenience. Thank you.
Oh, that was loud.
Okay.
That will wake me up. Okay, at least we know it works. All right. So anyway, so they would warm their hands like this. And so like I said, when you visit somebody's house, you wore thick sweaters. And I'm talking about the Tokyo area where it doesn't get as cold as this area, okay? So they live in this very cold area, and they had to, you know, back in the northern country, the people weren't rich at all because, you know, the growing season's short. They don't have much money. There are really not many products they can sell. Okay. So they had to wear clothes made out of hemp, and the hemp fluff was used for bedding, and somehow little bits of cotton, and it's probably leftover cotton or old cotton clothes, kimono, would make its way up north. And the rags were used for patching, okay, and also against the skin because it's a lot warmer. And they would unweave the cotton threads and use that and stitch into, you know, the hemp fabric. And so think of hemp as like roughly woven linen. So you would have, you know, you would see the eyes of the, you know, you would see little holes in the fabric. And basically they're weaving in more thread. So there are some rags. Boro means rags, okay? Some Boro garments still left over, and some are in museums now, but basically people were desperate and they just took patches of, that's cotton right there, and they would just take scraps and just stitch it on there with however they could. And then some were a little bit more refined, okay? But so this is a padded vest, quilted vest. And you just wore layers and layers and layers. So this was stitched, just random stitching and, you know, patches of, I'm not sure, I don't think it has cotton in the bedding. I think it's probably hemp fiber. Okay, so you're stuck in the snow and probably 6 months out of the year. And so there's lots of time. This, we're talking about in the olden days, there's lots of time for slow stitching and very slow stitching and almost like meditation, okay? So they would have to take the, you know, they couldn't just go down to the store and buy thread, because remember these villages, and most of them were villages, and they're kind of, Japan is mostly mountainous. So when it snowed, you couldn't really get to the other village. You're stuck, you know, at home with your clan. My mother grew up way in the mountains, and there were probably, let's see, about 5 or 6 little tiny villages along the mountain path, and hers was second from the top. When she says villages, it turns out it's really a clan. They all had the same last name. So it was somebody's cousin or somebody's, you know, uncle or something like that. So she grew up in a place that had, I think there were like 5 houses. Okay. So anyway, people are isolated, they're stuck. So they had plenty of time to come up with, and somebody finally came up and says, why can't we make designs out of these running stitches? So since it was mostly white thread on indigo fabric or brown fabric is usually mud stained fabric. And so they decided, you know, they would just make patterns, and you will see waves, tortoise shells, blowing grass. You know, it was basically based on nature, inspired by nature. Okay. Where am I here? Yeah. Basket, fishing nets, things that they see around. So this is basically folk art. And then here's one. Now they do sell pre-printed kits now, so you can follow the designs. You don't have to draw them out yourself. So my mother stitched this and turned it into a pillow. So nowadays it's become popular. When I was growing up, 1960s and 70s, living in Japan, people didn't really get into this, okay? Because it still had a stigma, you know, it was still like poor people's art kind of thing, craft kind of thing. So they didn't really get into it. And then like around the 90s, you know, and late 80s, it started to become really popular. I think it's because a lot of the Japanese companies during the boom would bring their families to the States, to work for 3 or 4 or 5 years. And the housewives would be introduced to things like quilting. Back then, American quilting was unknown in Japan, like in the 60s. And so they got interested in that. And then when they realized that America had all these folk crafts, they looked into their own Japanese background and realized, hey, we have things like Sashiko. That's pretty cool. So that's how it got popularized. And right now, it's pretty popular. So here's some more examples. You can get these pre-printed kits and you do the stitching, and this is just painted on there. So my mother did those kits and more cushions, and then here's a mat, like a table mat, and that's the wave design. Okay. So anyway, it's always existed in the background. We were always aware of it, but it didn't really become popular until like late 80s and 90s, really. And now you can like even, you'll see like colored threads instead of the usual white on indigo. You'll see the colored threads. And I made this a long time ago. So it's colored thread with some Japanese fabric on it. And then here's some that I made. I stitched this for fun. And this is that variegated thread, the pearl cotton variegated thread, where it changes color from dark to light, dark to light. Yeah, those are really cool to work with, by the way. So I put that on the cover. I just covered one of those composition notebooks because I needed one for a workshop I was taking. And then I had stitched this on the other part of the fabric for fun. And so I used that scrap, that test piece sample I made, and I covered that composition book, and I stitched this on so I can have a pen there. So it's kind of fun, to do just little samples, because you can, like, this was a flip phone, cell phone holder. Excuse me. And then you can buy pre-printed double layer cotton, very thin cotton. These are really for like, what is it? Dishcloth? Yeah, dishcloth. So you can buy that. And I use variegated thread here. But if you look here, I didn't finish. That's the printing. I didn't finish here either because I got bored following the marks. I just got bored. It's more fun to make my own designs, So here I made some samples of my own designs, just little test pieces, especially in the winter when you're stuck inside watching TV, it's just fun to make these little thingies. Okay. And now here is one where instead of white on indigo color fabric, I use like navy thread, indigo color thread on beige linen. Okay. Another scrap piece of fabric I had laying around. I thought I'd try this design. Okay. Now, what are you going to do with all these? Okay. So I also even tried like my own design. All right. Just for practice, just for fun. I actually finished this bag, by the way. And I made radishes and carrots, and I thought, oh, whatever. And I had a bunch of these little samples laying around, but I never threw them away. And recently, I actually sold a couple of them for like $1. I said, here, you buy this for $1 and do something with it. My original intention was to do a pot holder out of these two, but I just lost interest again. So now I did turn some of these into like, these were the old flip phone covers. Okay, so here you can put your sunglasses in that thing. Pin cushion. Okay, and then this one actually I still use. It's my checkbook holder. Okay. Now I actually had to do several workshops, so I finally finished that bag. That's a denim bag. Okay, I do have to line it because on Sashiko the back side is all raw. All the threads are everywhere. So you do have to line the stuff. This is the popular hemp leaf pattern, and I turned it into a crossbody bag. I think that's on denim, yeah. And you know how you have purses laying around that you don't use anymore? Well, that came off of an old purse, all these gadgets. Okay? you don't have that, you can always go to the thrift store and buy a cheap person, look for the gadgets you can use. No need to buy them, right? Now, I use this book. Nowadays, you have all kinds of books, but I use this book. It's written in English. And what I did was, what the good thing about this is it tells you in what order to go. So it'll tell you, go here first, go here next, and that helps save thread, and it helps the thread from being bunched up in the back of the fabric. So somebody figured that out, okay? Now, there are other books I haven't had, I haven't looked at them or anything because I have this one and it works for me, okay? Now, so don't just jump into making a big project. Just make those little samples like I did. You can always use it for something, later on. Now, I did make some that were garments. This is wool crepe that I threw in the washer a million times, washer and dryer to beef it up. And I had some leftover rayon, and I needed something warm to wear in the clay studio because I work in clay. So I made this vest, and at first I thought, well, I'll just put a little design here. Well, and then I decided, well, I'll just put another design here, and then it just got out of control, and the whole thing is stitched. Okay. Way too much. And then so here's another, this is a not so hot studio garment. And I just put stitching on the shoulder. Now, the back side, because this is one simple spiral, there's a few places I might have knots, but it's not like a whole bunch of stuff going on in the background, okay? And it's some cheap polyester pretend linen fabric, and a lot of people just wear old t-shirts in the clay studio. Well, I have to look cool, right? So I have make these, plus I had a lot of fabric. Here's another one. This is a wool crepe jacket, and then this is wool gauze, and I threw it in the washer and dryer 3 times to shrink it up, and I just did random spiral stitches. And this is variegated, I think it's tensile, I misspelled here. It's tensile thread. It's just something I found at Hand Weavers Guild. Yeah, I collect thread too. All right, you don't have to cover your entire garment. You can just do little accents, okay? So I put a little accent on the sleeve part here. All right, what kind of thread am I using? Now, if you go online and look at Sashiko stuff, they'll say you have to use Sashiko fabric, you have to use Sashiko thread, blah, blah, blah. Now, keep in mind, originally, people just use whatever fabric, whatever rags they could get their hands on, whatever thread. Okay, you don't have to use the Sashiko fabric or the Sashiko thread. It doesn't matter. Try out different types of thread and see what you like the best, okay? I like the pearl cotton hank thread, embroidery thread, the number 5, not the number 8, not the number 3, which is thicker. I just like the number 5. It works for me. I have tried all kinds of threads. One of the projects I might try yarn on wool crepe. Okay, so
excuse me, the name of the thread you're using is
the length.
The name of the thread you're using.
Do you see right here on the bottom? It says pearl cotton thread. Right here. Pearl cotton.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes I don't know. You know what? I call it pearl, but let me see if it has a different name. Oh, I think it's different brands, but they just call it pearl cotton. Sometimes it's PERLE. And I don't know why they call it. I think maybe it's because it has a shine to it, like a pearly shine. Maybe that's why. It doesn't come apart like embroidery thread. Embroidery thread, you can divide it and it pulls apart. This doesn't. This is twisted. That's why you get that shine. Okay.
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 Where can we find it?
You can get it online. You can find it at Michael's. You can find it at Joann's. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Now, if I like to do, if I'm going to do white or off-white, I kind of like off-white because the white is a little bit too stark, but it depends on what you like. Well, oh, if I'm gonna do it on a dark fabric like indigo, and this is linen, usually I use linen. You can use linen, you can use linen cotton, you can use denim, you can use cotton, you can use whatever fabric. Remember that other one that I used, polyester? Okay, this was a scrap that somebody gave me, and I had enough to make this little kimono top. So I just used that. You can, like I said, you should make small samples first and see if you like what it looks like, okay? Now, if I use a dark fabric for the marker, this is what I use. I use the Clover brand white pen, marking pen. Yeah, and I'll show you after the PowerPoint is over. Okay, I just like that. Some companies might make something similar to that, but that's what I use. Okay, and the reason why I like that is because remember that denim bag I showed you earlier, this one. Okay, I drew out the design and I forgot about it. I did the bird, then I forgot about the whole thing for about a year and a half. When I found the bag again, among all the things I forgot, the mark was still there. Okay,
Oh.
the mark doesn't disappear unless you use a hot steam iron. So that's why I like that marker. I don't know if other companies have copied that or not, but it is kind of costly. You can get it on Amazon cheaper. It's maybe about $8 on Amazon. Okay, people will say you need to use Sashiko needles. All right, difference between Sashiko needles and embroidery needles. The Sashiko needles, the eye part is really thin, okay? Embroidery needles, the eye part is kind of thick, so it's kind of hard to pull it through the fabric sometimes. You don't have to use Sashiko needles. What I found that you can use is they sell this thing called doll needles, DOLL. And the one I found came in a pack of like 3 different lengths. Those needles are very long, they're very sharp, and those work pretty good to me. Not the biggest, not the longest one, but the shortest one. The shortest one was still long enough, and it worked really good. So you can use that. You can try different embroidery needles. You just need a bigger eye for the floss to go through. I just happen to have a bunch of Sashiko needles from a long time ago, and then the doll needles. So you don't need to have like special needles. You don't need to have like special floss. You can try using the 6-strand embroidery floss if you want. You can even like divide it and use only 4 strands. I've tried using silk thread. I didn't like the way it shined, okay? The silk floss, embroidered thread. So I just like the pearl cotton. It just works for me. Okay, so here is, okay, oh, here's a pearl cotton. It's number 5 too. And see here it's spelled PERLE, so I guess this is a French brand or something, I don't know.
Yeah, this is French.
French, right? Yeah, pearl
Yes.
cotton, the Sashiko. So this is pearl cotton, and the Sashiko thread is much thinner. Now, the problem with the Sashiko thread is you probably most likely have to buy it online because it's imported from Japan, and it's expensive, and you have to buy a lot, okay? Because the hanks are very small. Pearl cotton, it comes in all kinds of colors. You can buy it at Joann's. It is kind of expensive. It's like $3 something for a hank, but it's easy to find. All right. So this one, I don't know what this is, what I did here. I think this is Sashiko thread because it looks really thin, okay? I just don't like the way Sashiko thread looks. Okay, so this is when I was doing the kits in the thing, but I'll show you the bag, okay? I'll show you both of these bags. Okay, now, one thing, some books will tell you all kinds of rules, like how to tie the knot, how, when you first start, blah, blah, blah. I don't pay attention to any of that. If you're embroidery person, maybe you pay attention to all that. But the thing I pay attention to is these are supposed to be the stitches, the threads, okay? So if your thread is 3 units long, okay, if I divide it up in 3, the space between, if you aim for 2 units, it looks better. It just visually looks better. And let me see if I can give an example. You can't, that's not a good one. Oops, that's not it. Okay, you can't tell on this, but I aim for 3 unit length and 2. So the space is just slightly less than the length of the thread. Does that make sense? Okay, if you aim for that, it looks good. And so same thing here, if you divide the stitch and the blank space into 5 units, you got ratio of 3 to 2. Okay, so the blank space is less than the stitch length. Okay, I put 3/8 inch, but it's really wrong. The stitch should be about 3/16 of an inch. So it's much smaller than 3/8. Okay, now let's say you come to so down here, see, don't make little teeny tiny dots. And don't make long loops because they do catch on things. Okay, so it's recommended you do that 3 to 2 ratio. And this is wrong. It's not 3, it's 3/16 of an inch. I have to change that. Okay, let's say you come to a sharp corner. Okay, you need to, this is the back side of the fabric. You need to give it a little loop. And the reason why is if you don't give it a loop, if you just go straight here, that these stitches will try to curve towards each other and won't look straight. It'll slant. It's just a physics thing, I guess. Okay, so here's an example. Now, when you pick up, so here's an example of the sharp corner. See, I made a little loop here, and then I made another loop here. Okay, this is the back side of the fabric. And then if I have a long jump, okay, this is the back side of the fabric, I'm going to make a loose join thread. Okay, don't make it tight because it'll pull on the other side. When you stitch with Sashiko, it's recommended if you want a straight line, pick up 3 stitches at a time. Okay, it just makes it a neater, straighter line. And I think this is the front of the fabric. Oh, mine's not neat and straight, but see these 3 stitches, they're kind of in a line because I picked up those 3 stitches together. I don't know what happened to this guy. He's not behaving, is he? Okay, now, there are a few rules to make it, the reason why we have these rules is people found out it looks better. Your end product looks better if you follow these rules. Okay. When you come to an intersection like this, don't cross over that stitch, okay? Leave a tiny little space between all 4 stitches right here. When you come to a T intersection, once again, leave a stitch, don't connect anybody. Understand that? Now, you can, if you come to a corner, you want to make 1 stitch reach the corner. Don't leave a blank space because then, it just visually doesn't look good. When you come to the center where you have several intersections, you want to leave I didn't even draw a circle here, but it looks like a circle, right? Because you're leaving space. Don't cross over those stitches. Okay. And then the back side, if you have a big jump, make it loose. Don't make it tight like this. Okay. Loose, loose, loose. All right. And same here at the sharp corners, loose, loose, loose. Don't make it tight like that. Okay. Now, when you're sewing, you want all your stitches to be kind of loose. You don't want to make them tight. Okay. They should be sort of loose. Okay. Now, notice right here, I come to the center of this circle. I'm not stitching a circle here. I'm just marking where my stitch is going to stop. So this guy stops here, this guy stops here. This guy, when I stitch, 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 I'm going to stop here at the last stitch, okay? And that's all that means, okay. This was for a hemp leaf. When I was doing a workshop, we did a hemp leaf and it looks really complicated, but it just following the direction and it's really easy, but let's not get into that right now. Now, I do have a blog spot I just made just for the Sashiko. You can go there. And there will be instruction for the hemp leaf. Now, my problem is this. I don't know how to send the hemp leaf pattern to you, okay? I might be able to create a PDF and you might have to print it out. So that's the only problem I have. How do I get the patterns to you? You can look on blog sites, you know, different Sashiko blog sites, and maybe some of them you can print it out. But I don't know what else to do here. So let's just continue on real quick. So with the little fun samples, you know, we can make little pin cushions just for your special needles. Okay, so all I did was draw a flower pattern, and these are French knots. Okay, I didn't iron this so you can still see my white mark. Right, and then I just made another pin cushion. This is just cardboard covered in fabric. Right, so if you want the, you know, my address for the blog spot, you can just watch this video again and come to this page, and you'll see. Okay, all right. So do you have any questions so far before I jump into this? No. Okay. So I have here indigo fabric. It's linen actually. And what I did was to draw the design, I used my Clover pen. Okay, what is this? Yeah, here it is. Okay, and it's the white marker, and it's just like a ballpoint pen. Okay, and the coolest thing about this is when you first draw on it, you think it's not working, right? So I'm going to draw a line and you won't see my line. Let's see if this even shows up. Maybe I need something to prop this up. Let's see if this will work. All right, I think it's kind of dark. Okay, when I first draw a line, you're not going to see it. And then slowly it shows up. Let's see if it shows up. Okay, do you see it slowly showing up? See, now I have a line. Yeah, this is the weirdest thing. So it's kind of hard when you're first tracing something with this or drawing something with this, because the line first doesn't show up. Now, what I do is you can, you know, use whatever kind of fabric, but I iron the fabric onto freezer paper. And if you're a quilter, you know about freezer paper, right? You can just go to the grocery store, buy freezer paper, and it's coated on one side with plastic. The shiny side has a thin layer of plastic on it. And that side melts, the plastic melts onto the fabric. And the reason why I do that is because it stabilizes the fabric versus, you know, the fabric's going to move around, especially linen. So I can draw out my design. Now this design, I just kind of traced it. I just used a ruler. I still don't know which way where I'm going to actual stitch, but it's kind of fun. What I've been doing all the way up until now mostly is you can buy these Sashiko stencils online. Just Google Sashiko stencils, and you can trace it with this. Okay, and I have lots of these different kind of traditional designs, but I just decided I'm going to try something that I've never tried before. So I did that. This is the pearl cotton thread. This is the pearl cotton thread I like to use. This one happens to be an Anchor brand, okay, but it is number 5, okay. So on these, what you do is you take it apart, and there's a knot here that keeps it together, okay. So you take it apart and see where it's tied right there. Okay, you only make one cut. Don't make 2 cuts, okay? You might think you make 2 cuts, but you make 1 cut. You just cut the whole thing. And then so you have this long piece, okay? And then you just slide one out. Now, I also did buy, because I'm getting old and I can't see anymore, I did buy one of these Clover brand, this is on my blog site too. I just have this little bell on here so I can find it, because otherwise I lose it. Okay, it has a cover on it somewhere. And if you're very gentle, it slides in. This actually is a Sashiko needle, so the eye is smaller, it's narrow versus, I'm going to show you, okay, when you buy a doll needle kit, I think they come in 3 different sizes, and yeah. And so this size actually works really good, okay? And it's not, doesn't bulge out like embroidery needles do. Let me show you the embroidery needle. Okay, so this would be the embroidery needle. See how the eye bulges out? And this one's more straight. Yeah, this kind of gets in the way, this bulging part. Right? So, and then the Sashiko needle is a little bit thinner. And it comes in all different types, so it gets confusing too. And I can tell this is Sashiko needle because it's gold right here. Okay, I don't know if it's real gold, but it's golden color. All right, let's see if I can show you. Okay, see how it's straight up and down, and the it doesn't bulge out like the embroidery needle. Okay. So I just use one of these things, and I actually bought 2 of these because just in case I break one, I don't cry. I have a backup. Okay, so you're supposed to be able to stick this in that little slot, and it works great for like, you know, they sell the smaller ones, but this one's really for bigger eye what? Needles, yeah. So you just stick it in here, and then be gentle, okay? And then pull it out. So that thread's my thread. So this thread is long, okay? But that's what I use, the pearl cotton thread. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of samples. Oh, on the freezer paper. So once I draw out my design, I just peel off the freezer paper, okay? Sometimes you can use the same freezer paper over and over for a while. We'll do that now. So we did that zippered pouch. Well, I made one out of the Sashiko fabric I stitched, all right? I wouldn't do this again. I would plan out ahead of time and leave like a border, because it just got bulky here with all this stitching, okay, extra stitching. But I think it's pretty stunning. And then with some of the samples, I made a little mat, you know, because I'm always eating or drinking something by the computer, so I can put a glass or something and whatever else I'm eating. So it's just concentric circles, that's all it is. And a ginkgo leaf, okay? I just drew it freehand, but you can, you know, go online and print out something. So here was that thing I made, and this, excuse me, this holds my sunglasses, and inside is kind of like pretend suede fabric so that my sunglasses don't slip out. Here is one where I actually made, this is lightweight denim fabric. It's actually tensile denim, okay? So I made a whole bag out of that, and this one is lined, all right? And then I made a square sample for one of my workshops, and I turned it into a pocket for this bag, which I made, and I think it comes out pretty stunning, okay? It's on a canvas, I think this is canvas. And so that's a pocket, all right? So you can do all kinds of things with it. Now, this is supposed to be a interactive class, meaning hands-on, meaning I'm, you know, hope you guys will stitch along with me. I'm going to start this. And so I'm hoping that you guys will have some kind of a dark blue fabric next time and some thread and needle. And if you can't transfer a design, you can do any kind of design. If you have those stencils, those, what do you call it? Quilting stencils for quilting, you know, they have like, you can probably use that. When I first did this, they didn't sell this, they didn't have this pen. So I had to use chalk, and it was frustrating because the chalk lines would disappear, you know, as you're working on the fabric. I, on this one, I think what I'm gonna do is, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna go for that 3:2 ratio. And I think I'm going to end up just before I hit that intersection, okay, and then jump over to here. Now, when you stitch, you really need to keep your stitching loose. And like I said before, you kind of want to pick up like 3 stitches at a time. I can't see this. And your stitch length should be about 3/16 of an inch. Okay. You don't want it to look like little dots either. So, and because it's just a running stitch, if you mess up real bad, you can just pull out this way. Now, I picked up 3 stitches, and then what I do is I kind of pull the fabric because I don't want this to be tight at all. Okay, do you see how it's kind of like laying on top of the fabric? Like, yeah. Now, when you come to an intersection, you gotta go, oh no, I got 1 stitch length too long. We just kind of fudge it. Because when you finish the whole thing, it's gonna look good. Okay, so now I'm going to, I didn't even draw this correctly. Okay, I'm just gonna jump over there to the other side. Now, what I'm probably, since this is just a grid that I drew myself, I'm probably just gonna go back and forth, and then do the back and forth, back and forth. I'm not gonna do the diagonal lines first because diagonal stitching is gonna stretch my fabric because it's gonna be on the bias. So once I do the top ones and once I do the sideway ones, and then I'm gonna do the diagonal ones. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so you wanna keep the diagonal ones last. Okay, so that's about all I can say for today. And if you can, see if you can find some, if you want to try this with me, see if you can find some, you know, you can even try it on denim. It might be a little bit hard to stitch through, but it's possible. And draw yourself some kind of a design, even if you have to do it on, I don't think pencil will show up on denim, right? You know, the quilters have all kinds of gadgets and tools, marking tools. So maybe you can use one of those quilting pencils or something. And so once again, I stitch it and I just kind of keep it loose. Okay, so you know, it might be boring because I'm going back and forth, but once I start reaching the finish line, it's going to look pretty cool, I think. Right? Any questions? Do you think you're interested in doing this next time?
Okay, for the intersection, we need to skip the intersection, or you can just go through the intersection. You see how you have like a cross?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand what you just said. What was this again?
You know, you have a cross when you're doing some part, you have a cross. Yeah, you have to skip it, or just you can you can sew on. Yeah, like it's like a cross.
This is actually linen. Okay, I sew my own clothes, so I have a lot of leftover fabric. Okay, so let's say you didn't have dark fabric like this. Let's say you only had white. Okay, then you would use, you know, like dark blue or blue embroidery thread. But the thing is, draw your designs. If you use white fabric, whitish fabric, you can lightly draw your designs with pencil, because after you wash it, the pencil marks go away anyway. Does that make sense? And as far as the design, if you can Google Sashiko traditional, you can try traditional, or you can try your own grids. Okay, you can come up with your own designs. All right.
Okay.
Okay. But
Okay.
it'd be cool. And then once I finish this, you know, what am I going to turn it into? Well, maybe right now I'm not inspired, but it could be the pocket on the bag. It could be pocket on a jacket. It could be a, you know, a little bag itself. You know, if I wanted to, I can even make it into a pot holder, fancy pot holder. Or we can make a zip pouch, zippered pouch. Okay, any questions? It's just simple, straight stitching. It does have a few rules, but it's actually kind of fun to do. A lot of people enjoy doing this. At first, it might seem like, oh gosh, that's so much work, but because it's like mindless, straight stitching, it's really not hard at all, and it's actually kind of relaxing. Okay, and since we can't go anywhere anyway, I mean, or you shouldn't be going out to parties and all that. You know, you're stuck at home anyway, so you might as well do something like this. Now, this might be fun, like if you do patchwork, it might be fun to make a bunch of different designs in squares, large squares, 12-inch squares, and put them together. All right, and put them together, sashing. That might be spectacular. Okay. All right. Okay. So hopefully we'll see you next week. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you for the class.
You're welcome. All
Okay.
right. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.